Why is there so much violence in South Korean media? From Oldboy to Parasite to Squid Game, there is so much violence and brutality shown. Is it because we are all just sociopaths who love watching violence on screen?
Wow, that's pretty hardcore. Jeez. That's like this one time when I didn't like a kid, so I ground his parents up into chili and fed it to him.
You got it, man. You got it.
See ya.
Maybe. Or is there a deeper reason behind this? Well, yes, there is. South Korea is a dystopian nightmare. On the outside, South Korea may seem like a thriving country, a good place to live or grow up in, where fame and success are just around the corner. But this is an illusion. Forms of media such as cinema have been trying to illustrate the reality of South Korea for many years. For instance, notice how in Oldboy, Parasite and Squid Game, the enemy/antagonists are very rich, wealthy and powerful people. The protagonists are all of a lower class. Deeply rooted societal issues are presented in their media, which directly relate to why there is so much brutality in these shows. To understand this, we must take a look at the many glaring issues facing South Koreans. Firstly, the country has the lowest birth rate in the world. Less and less people are choosing to have children. A country needs at least a score of 2.1 to keep its population surviving. The fertility rate in South Korea is 0.72 per woman. To try and raise the rate, there are pushes towards things like speed dating for Koreans, or suggestions from stupid people that girls should start school a year earlier than boys to make them more appealing. Many factors contribute to the low birth rate. There is a divide among men and women. Laws have been written by men to be against women. For example, only in 2021 was abortion decriminalized. Men have also expressed their disdain towards pregnant seating for women on public transport. The country has the largest wage gap in the world between men and women. The beauty standards are extremely high. South Korea has the most plastic surgery per capita in the world. So if you're a woman in South Korea, there are so many issues you're already facing, and this just scratches the surface. The country has a horrible work and school culture. It costs almost $270,000 to raise a child until they are 18. The education system for children is disgusting and beyond horrible.
왜냐면 못 나오게 했어요. 그냥 방에서. 예.
근데 그 초등학생이 거기 5시간 앉아있다는 게 진짜
안 죽어요.
번아웃은 어떤 형태로
정말 그게 오는데 어떻게 왔냐면 방해를 못 들어가고요.
본인 방에?
네, 방에 감옥 갔다고 하면서
5살이?
네.
어떡해.
As they are often pressured by adults to become successful from an early age in order to secure a job that pays well just to survive. If you don't get into a good university, it's almost like your life is screwed. This is why private tutoring is so big there, where kids are waking up, studying, eating, studying, sleeping, and repeating from 8 a.m. to 1 a.m. Most of the population lives near cities in order to compete with each other and get into the top universities. There is also a cultural stigma of working hard that is put onto children so they can work harder than everyone else in order to be superior and have higher status. South Korea also has the highest self-end rate in a first world country. One of the few ways to get out of the corporate system is to get into the music industry, but unfortunately you would still be a slave. Members have to starve themselves in order to not gain any weight, eat a strict diet, work all day on routines, and from a young age are pushed beyond their limits. They are not allowed to date others, to play into the romance fantasy their fans have, which we've all seen from K-pop fans. They are told what to do by their management, treated as property and not humans. There is not only a dark side to K-pop, but many systems in the country. A former K-pop star shared his story of ending up in debt, which is why management often takes a huge portion of a star's income if they ended up successful in order to pay the debt back. Sound familiar? You'll see debt be a massive theme in South Korea. What you'll also see is the country run by family-controlled conglomerates, such as Hyundai, Samsung, and LG to name a few. To put it into perspective, the entire country relies so heavily on these businesses that if one, such as Samsung, were to do bad, it would affect the whole nation. This is the equivalent of America depending on Apple for economic stability, or Microsoft, or worse, EA.
Congratulations, Mr. Krabs.
Hello, I like money.
What inspired you to build a second Krusty Krab right next door to the original?
money.
They have so much wealth and power that they often avoid criminal consequences and influence politics within the system. Let's take a look at some of these families. The Yu family is known for their wealth and power. Yu Byung-an was a pastor with a cult-like following, an artist, and of course, a businessman. His church became a money-making enterprise, and he often told his followers to invest in companies tied to this church. In 1987, 32 alleged members were found dead in a factory near Seoul, the authorities stating it was linked to offing themselves because of debts they couldn't pay. Another family which perhaps holds the greatest power is the Samsung family. President Park was discovered to be entangled in backdoor deals with families, accepting bribes for government favors. Samsung was granted even more power after a deal was made. Lee Jae-young, the son of the family, was arrested, but of course, pardoned after 1 year. Why? Because the country relies on him. He held so much power, he was essentially above the law. The former President Park was also pardoned after serving only 5 years. The people of South Korea have tried to fight back against this corrupt system, against those who hold so much power and wield it in a narcissistic way. Unfortunately, they are caught in a lose-lose. For instance, if Samsung were to go down, then the entire economy would.
Samsung produces everything from medical supplies to energy, and they have substantial holdings in finance, resort management, and insurance.
Now let's take a look at each piece of media. Parasite masterfully portrays a multifaceted look at the class divide in South Korea. In the film, we see the family try to escape the reality of being poor by attempting to con the rich family, essentially finding a way out of the corporate system. Unfortunately, this is short-lived, and the son has to enter the corporate system in order to gain wealth. He has to become a capitalist in order to free his dad. They end up in the same cycle as the wealthy. To be in that top 1%, they had to play by the rules. Both sides leech off each other. The rich dispose of their employees like products. Letting people go is easy for them, as they are just expendable. Despite how many years or how credible these people are, they aren't even curious that each employee is being fired in a close time frame. Even at the end, there is no expression from the Parks to get everyone to safety or to help Jessica, the person they hired, as the father is only shouting for his car keys so him and his family can get the son to the hospital, but not Jessica, who is bleeding out. For the Kims, their greed is what leads to their downfall, as both children would have had a stable income that could have helped them with their futures. Additionally, because of their greed, they end up making stupid decisions such as to turn on the old maid rather than work together with her. Both are of a lower class than the Parks, but the Kims want the house and wealth all to themselves. This portrays how the lower class will clamber and climb on top of each other, ripping each other apart for a higher status and position in life. Both sides are narcissistic. This is especially portrayed well with the Parks through the trigger of smell. Smell is used as a way to showcase an invisible line the Parks have created that separates them from the poor. They are repulsed by the way the Kims smell, and in essence repulsed by the poor. This trigger and divide are so strong, it happens in the middle of a murder. Mr. Park can't stand the smell, and this causes the father of the Kims to lash out violently. The poor are aware that their existence may cause repulsion among the rich, and it is fine to them when this becomes suppressed and isn't called to attention. But smell is used because we cannot escape it. We can close our eyes and turn away at something, but we cannot stop breathing. And so the reality of this separation between the rich and the poor seeps into everyone's awareness through this sense. It is something they cannot deny, that deep down, the rich hate the poor. The smell goes right through them and breaches their narcissistic bubble, pulling the two classes closer, which is also what the rich hate. They want to be ignorant and in denial of reality. They don't want to see the pain that the poor and the lower classes go through. It is also interesting that the Parks never tell the Kims politely that there is a smell around them. It's almost as if they are waiting for that imaginary line to be crossed so that they can express their disdain towards the lower class, fire them, and start the cycle all over again. In Oldboy, it is because Woo Jin is rich that he has power to protect himself from the legal system, that he's able to get away with kidnapping Dae-soo. We see him use his resources to make the police think that Dae-soo is a murderer. Moreover, the name Dae-soo literally means getting through one day at a time, a representation of the middle and lower classes. An article from Bloomberg states that a number of scholars who took a deeper look at the film argued that its violent plot and depiction of Seoul during the period of Dae-soo's imprisonment, 1988 to 2003, is a critique of the social inequality wrought by South Korea's economic crisis. The period saw the country go, hat in hand, to international lenders for a bailout. The narrative twist is that the middle-class salaryman, by acquiring violent masculinity, believes he is winning against an elite, but in the end, it is the upper class who is winning the entire time. The Vanderbilt University film professor Se-Young Kim tells CityLab, the film's deep pessimism is found in the notion that agency, even violent agency, cannot change the class system. Squid Game is perhaps the most famous example of South Korean media. There's a big conflict between the poor and the rich in this show. The rich are heavily narcissistic, creating games of death to which they manipulate those in need of money to participate. From their perspective, they just want to have fun. They have so much money, they don't know what to do with it. But I say this in a way to highlight how psychopathic they are. They could easily make a positive impact on the world, especially in their own country, with the vast amount of wealth they all have, but instead choose to serve their own pleasure. Even though participants aren't exempt from the responsibility of the choice to enter and re-enter the games, the ones in power are not upfront that if you participate, you most likely will die, and when it comes to re-entering, they play on the poor's need of money. To add to this, the notion that all things are equal in the games is a lie. The games aren't fair for everyone, such as those requiring strength, or that some people don't know how to play certain games, putting them at a significant disadvantage. Debt is common in South Korea. More and more people owe money and cannot afford to pay off their debt. The participants are willing to kill each other to not only win and pay off their debts, but to live. Surviving is one thing, which is essentially a world of enduring pain and meeting only a few needs, but to live is entirely different. To have freedom, abundance, enough money to meet so many needs, and to never ever have to worry about money again is truly liberating. It is essentially to hold power, a lot of it. The rich see the participants as trash, as nothing but disposable. They despise the poor, seeing them as weak, incompetent, and having no benefit to society. It is a weird conundrum because, despite their repulsion to the participants, they still rely on these kinds of people for their own fun. The ones running Squid Game also believe that they are above the law. They do these games in secret in the hopes no one will find the missing participants because no one will care about those who are in debt and poor. An interesting fact is the strike spoken about in the show was based on a real-life strike at SsangYong Motors. SsangYong wanted to lay off 43% of workers. After 77 days of striking, cops violently broke it up, and workers were saddled with massive fines with massive interest, many off themselves, and the vans that Squid Game uses to transport players, SsangYong. To summarize, a quote from the director of Squid Game states, "I wanted to write a story that was an allegory or fable about modern capitalist society, something that depicts an extreme competition, somewhat like the extreme competition of life, but I wanted it to use the kind of characters we've all met in real life." Hwang said, "As a survival game, it is entertainment and human drama. The games portrayed are extremely simple and easy to understand. That allows viewers to focus on the characters rather than being distracted by trying to interpret the rules." So why is there so much violence in South Korean media? I believe it's because it's an expression of how people feel living in South Korea. It is a depiction of what life is like for the average person. The harshness, coldness, cutthroat nature of people, all in competition with each other to gain some power and higher status through financial gain. People are willing to climb over each other because the society has put people in a state of survival and desperate need. Everyone needs help. Everyone is craving to have a better life. I believe that the violence and brutality shown in forms of media such as cinema and TV shows is an expression for what people really feel like in their internal world, a world that contains anger, hatred, powerlessness, despair, sadness, and pain. The fact that those in control hold so much power but choose to use it for their own benefit just creates more divide in the country. It also creates a narcissistic society where they want people to fight against each other. You are set up for hardship if born in South Korea. It is a system many people have tried to change, but it holds so tight and firm among the corrupt that it is difficult to change from the ground up. The one thing these forms of media have done is break any illusion that South Korea is just an average or even greatly positive living experience if you are South Korean. They have shown the reality through things like Oldboy, Parasite, and Squid Game, that living or growing up in South Korea is not the same as other countries. It is a life of harsh competition growing up, endurance, and pain.